Sophie, I want to tell you about a learner I spoke with recently. And I want to tell you because I think hundreds of thousands of people listening to this episode are going to recognize themselves in her.
Okay, tell me about her.
She is a senior executive, manages a team of over 100 people, has 2 master's degrees, speaks 4 languages. In her native language, she is known as one of the sharpest, most articulate, most insightful leaders in her industry. When she speaks at conferences in her own language, audiences are captivated. She makes complex ideas feel simple. She is, by every measure, a brilliant communicator.
And in English?
In English, she feels like a child. Her words are simpler, her sentences are shorter, her pace is slower, her vocabulary feels limited. And when she speaks English in international meetings, she carries this constant gnawing fear that the other people in the room think she's less intelligent than her native language colleagues.
And the painful part is, she has internalized this fear so deeply that she has started to avoid speaking up in those meetings. She stays silent, even when she has the best idea in the room, because she doesn't want her accent or her slower English to make her look stupid.
And so the brilliant executive in English becomes the quiet executive, the one who nods, the one who agrees, the one who doesn't contribute, even though her brain is firing with insights she could share if only she trusted her English to deliver them.
And this is one of the most expensive forms of language insecurity in the world, because it doesn't just hurt the learner, it deprives every meeting, every team, every project of their actual contribution. And it convinces brilliant people, slowly, over years, that they are somehow less than their colleagues.
When the truth is, they are exactly as intelligent in English as they are in their native language. They just sound slower, simpler, less elegant, and they've confused those things with intelligence itself.
And today, we're going to take that confusion apart, piece by piece, because once you can separate who you are from how you sound, the accent insecurity starts to dissolve, and the brilliant version of you, the one that exists in your native language, can finally show up in English too.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Today is for the high-achieving professional who feels childlike in English, the executive, doctor, engineer, teacher, leader who is brilliant in their native language and feels diminished every time they switch to English.
We are going to give you a completely new way to think about your English voice and about who you actually are in it.
Stay with us. We have the great confusion between speed and intelligence, the difference between who you are and how you sound, why your colleagues are not making the judgments you think they are, the 3 practices to reclaim your intellectual presence in English, a role play showing the same idea expressed in native and English versions, and a word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 words.
Quick comment question before we begin. Have you ever stayed silent in a meeting because you didn't want people to judge your accent or English? Drop a yes or no. We genuinely want to see how widespread this silence is. Okay, let's talk about who you really are. So, Sophie, let's start with the central confusion at the heart of this episode, because I think when learners see it clearly, the whole problem starts to shift.
Yes, the confusion is this. Learners equate the speed and fluency of their speech with their intelligence. When they speak slowly, hesitate, search for words, use simpler vocabulary, their inner voice says, "I sound stupid right now." And then, because they sound stupid to themselves, they assume they sound stupid to everyone else.
And it's a deeply human confusion because in our native language, slow speech often does signal something: uncertainty, lack of preparation, not knowing what you're talking about. So when we speak our second language slowly, our brain interprets that same slowness as a signal of those same things, even though in this case it isn't.
Right. The slow English of a brilliant non-native speaker is not slow because they don't know what they're talking about. It is slow because the delivery system, the mouth and the mental retrieval, has not been trained to operate at the speed of their native language. The thoughts inside are exactly the same speed, exactly the same complexity. They just take longer to come out.
And this is the great unfairness of being a high-achieving non-native speaker. Your thoughts are sophisticated, your insights are sharp, your reasoning is fast, but your delivery is constrained by a second-language speech system that was trained later in life. And so the gap between what you can think and what you can say in real time is wider than it is for native speakers.
And the listener, hearing only the spoken part, has no idea what's happening inside your head. They only hear the slower, simpler version, and without context, they might form an impression based on that, which feels deeply unfair when you know that your real thinking is so much more than what came out.
But here is what almost no one tells learners. Most listeners are far less harsh in their judgments than you imagine, especially in international professional environments where everyone has worked with non-native speakers for years. They have learned, often unconsciously, to separate accent from intelligence. They have heard brilliant ideas come out of slow speech many times, and they know better than to confuse the two.
And this is where the accent insecurity gets really painful. The learner is often the only person in the room making the harsh judgment. The colleagues are not thinking, she sounds simple, she must be unintelligent, but the learner is thinking it about herself. And the silence that follows comes from her own inner critic, not from any external judgment.
And so the silence, which was meant to protect her image, is the very thing that damages it. Because in a meeting, the people who don't speak are the people who get forgotten. The people who do speak, even imperfectly, are the people who get remembered. And so the brilliant silent executive ends up being seen as less of a contributor than her louder, less insightful colleagues.
The cost of accent insecurity is not the accent. The cost is the silence it creates.
Let's actually break down why this confusion between speed and intelligence happens, because I think when learners see the mechanics of it, they can start to challenge it.
Yes, 3 reasons learners equate slow English with low intelligence.
Reason 1. Your inner critic uses your native language standards.
Your inner critic was built in your native language. It was shaped by the standards of your native language speech. And in your native language, slow speech often does mean something. So when you speak slowly in English, your inner critic applies its old criteria. It says, if I were speaking this slowly in my native language, I would sound stupid. Therefore, I must sound stupid now, too.
And the inner critic doesn't realize that the criteria don't transfer. Slow English from a non-native speaker is not the same as slow native language speech. They look the same on the surface. They mean completely different things underneath.
Reason 2, cultural and educational conditioning.
In many cultures, especially academic and professional ones, fluency of speech is treated as a marker of competence. We are taught from childhood that smart people speak well, that articulate speech is a sign of education, intelligence, and capability. So when our speech becomes less articulate, we automatically feel less competent.
And again, the conditioning doesn't account for the language switch. It treats fluent speech as universally indicative of intelligence, regardless of whether it's your first, second, or third language.
Reason 3. We compare ourselves to the wrong people.
The high-achieving non-native speaker usually works in environments full of native speakers, and the native speakers, in English, sound effortlessly fluent, sophisticated, quick. So the learner's natural comparison is to those native speakers, and next to them, the learner inevitably sounds slower and simpler.
But this is the worst possible comparison. The native speaker is using their first language. The learner is using their second. The two are not playing the same game. Comparing yourself to a native speaker is like comparing your performance in a sport you started at 20 to someone who has been playing since age 3.
A fair comparison is, how do I sound in English compared to how I would sound if a native English speaker was speaking my native language? And the answer is, you probably sound much better in English than they would sound in your language because you have actually put in the work.
3 reasons: the inner critic, cultural conditioning, wrong comparison. Together, they create the illusion that your English speech equals your intelligence, when in reality, your English speech is just one tool used in one moment that says almost nothing about who you actually are.
And this is the core distinction we need to make. Who you are versus how you sound. They are not the same, they have never been the same, and learning to separate them is one of the most important psychological shifts a high-achieving non-native speaker can ever make.
Who you are is your intelligence, your experience, your insights, your perspective, your years of expertise. None of this disappears when you switch languages. None of it diminishes. It's all still there, fully intact.
And how you sound is your delivery system, the speed of your speech, the vocabulary you can retrieve, the smoothness of your sentences. These are mechanical features. They're skills that have been trained more in some languages than in others, and they say nothing fundamentally about who you are as a thinker.
And once you can hold these two things apart, something shifts. You stop measuring your worth by your delivery. You start measuring it by what you actually have to contribute, which is enormous, which has not changed, which is exactly the same as it is in your native language.
And from that place, you can speak, even slowly, even simply, even with an accent, because you know that the value you bring to the conversation is not in the delivery, it's in the content, and the content is intact.
Let's talk about the 3 practices to reclaim your intellectual presence in English. Because the philosophy is one thing, the day-to-day practice of showing up confidently in English meetings is another.
Yes, 3 practices.
Practice 1, speak first, refine later.
This is the foundational practice. In meetings, in conversations, in any English moment, train yourself to speak first. Don't wait until you have the perfect sentence. Don't wait until you found the elegant phrasing. Get your point into the room. Then refine it as you go.
And the reason is simple. The cost of waiting is total silence. The cost of speaking imperfectly is just imperfect speech. Imperfect speech still shares your insight. Silence shares nothing.
And the more you speak first, the more your colleagues hear the content of your thinking, not the form of your speech. And content is what they remember. Content is what makes them trust you. Content is what builds your professional reputation.
Practice 2. Use silence as power, not as escape.
This is a subtle but powerful one. Most high-achieving non-native speakers either speak too little out of insecurity or rush through their speech trying to get it over with. Both are missed opportunities.
What you can do instead is use silence deliberately as a tool. Native speakers, especially executives and senior people, often pause before important points. They let silence build anticipation. They speak slowly with weight. And no one perceives this as a lack of intelligence. Quite the opposite. Slow, deliberate speech with intentional pauses is one of the most powerful executive presence signals there is.
So if your English is naturally slower than your native language, lean into it. Make the slowness part of your style. Speak with weight. Pause before your key points. Let the room wait for your insight. Treat your slower pace as authoritative, not as a deficiency.
And the reframe works because it's actually true. Slow, deliberate communication is a leadership style. Lots of brilliant people speak slowly in their native language, too. The slowness is not the problem. The problem is the apology that often surrounds it. Remove the apology and the slowness becomes a feature, not a bug.
Practice 3. Lead with your expertise. This is the heart of it.
When you contribute to a meeting in English, lead with your expertise, not with apologies for your English, not with disclaimers about your accent, not with sorry for my bad English before every sentence. Lead with the thing only you can say. Your insight, your experience, your perspective.
Because when you lead with your expertise, the listener's brain is immediately tuned to the content. They are listening for what you know. And what you know is sophisticated, specific, and valuable. The slow English becomes a vehicle for important information, and important information, delivered slowly, is still important information.
And when you apologize before speaking, you accidentally tell the listener that what you're about to say is less valuable. You frame yourself as inadequate before you've shared a single idea, so the listener listens with lowered expectations and meets those lowered expectations.
Stop apologizing. Lead with what you know. The English will carry it.
3 practices. Speak first, use silence as power, lead with your expertise. Together, they transform the way you show up in English professional environments, from silent and insecure to present and respected, without changing a single thing about your actual English level.
Because the change isn't about your English. The change is about your relationship with your English. And that relationship has been holding you back far more than the English itself.
Okay, let's do a role play. Mark, set it up. Yes, so I want the audience to hear the same idea expressed by the same brilliant person in 2 different ways. First, in their native language, hypothetically, what they would sound like, then in English, the version they actually deliver.
Okay, the scenario is a strategy meeting. The team is discussing whether to launch a new product in the third quarter or wait until the fourth quarter. And our speaker, a senior executive, wants to weigh in.
Version 1, what she would sound like in her native language, translated into English so we can compare.
Honestly, I think we are framing this question the wrong way. The choice is not between Q3 and Q4. The choice is between two completely different go-to-market strategies. If we launch in Q3, we are positioning ourselves as the disruptor. If we launch in Q4, we are positioning ourselves as the considered alternative. Each choice has its own competitive implications, its own marketing demands, its own pricing strategy. And I think before we pick a quarter, we need to pick a story. Once we know our story, the quarter becomes obvious.
Listen to that. Sophisticated, strategic, reframes the whole conversation, brings expertise that nobody else in the room has. This is the executive at her best, in her native language.
Now, version 2. Same executive, same insight, same brain, but in English with her slower delivery and simpler vocabulary. Okay, I think we are asking the wrong question. The question is not Q3 or Q4. The question is, what kind of product launch do we want to do? If we launch in Q3, we are the new fast one. If we launch in Q4, we are the careful, smart one. Both choices change everything: the marketing, the price, the story. So before we choose a date, we should choose what story we want to tell. The date will follow.
And listen to that. Same insight, same expertise, same reframe of the conversation. The vocabulary is simpler, the pace is slower, the sentences are shorter, but the intelligence is identical. The strategic insight is exactly the same.
And any colleague hearing version 2 takes notes, because the content is what matters, not the form. The slow, simple English delivered an insight that no one else in the room had, and that insight will be remembered long after the meeting ends.
And the executive in version 2 is the same person as the executive in version 1. The only thing that changed is the delivery system, the intelligence, the experience, the sharpness, the strategic mind. All of it is intact, just dressed in slightly simpler clothes.
And here is the moment of liberation. If you can accept that your English is simpler clothes, not a lower IQ, you can start showing up in your English meetings the way you show up in your native language ones, with confidence, with contribution, with your expertise leading the way.
Word tour? Word tour. First word, to equate. To equate two things means to treat them as equivalent, to assume they are the same. The accent Insecurity is built on equating slow speech with low intelligence, and once you see that you've been doing this, you can stop. For example, many learners equate their slower English with lower intelligence, when in reality, the two are completely separate. Repeat, equate.
Equate.
Next, delivery. In this context, delivery means the way something is communicated, the physical and verbal mechanics of how it comes out. We talk about a speaker's delivery, a comedian's delivery, a presenter's delivery, and in language learning, delivery refers specifically to the mechanics of producing speech.
For example, your intelligence is intact, but your delivery system in English has not been trained to operate at the same speed as your native language. Repeat, delivery.
Delivery.
Next, intact. Intact means whole, undamaged, complete. Nothing has been removed or lost, and it perfectly describes what is true about your intelligence when you speak a second language.
For example, even when your English feels slow and simple, your intelligence is fully intact, working at exactly the same level as it does in your native language. Repeat, intact.
Intact.
Next, diminish. To diminish means to make smaller, to lessen, to reduce in importance or value, and it describes exactly what learners do to themselves when they confuse their English with their identity. They diminish themselves, often without realizing it.
For example, many high-achieving non-native speakers diminish themselves in English meetings by staying silent or apologizing, even when they have the most valuable contribution in the room. Repeat, diminish.
Diminish. Next, presence. Presence is the feeling of being fully there, of taking up appropriate space, of being seen and heard. Executive presence is a famous concept, stage presence is another, and learners need to develop their English presence regardless of how slowly they speak.
For example, slow speech with strong presence is far more impactful than fast speech with weak presence, especially in professional settings. Repeat, presence.
Presence. And finally, to reclaim. To reclaim something means to take it back, to recover what was once yours. And reclaiming your intellectual presence in English is exactly what the accent insecurity has been blocking you from doing.
For example, the work of this episode is to help you reclaim the intellectual presence that you have always had, but that the accent insecurity has been hiding from view. Repeat, reclaim.
Reclaim. 6 words today: equate, delivery, intact, diminish, presence, and reclaim. Every one of these is a real, useful, modern English word that captures something specific about how identity and communication actually work.
And they are the kinds of words you'll hear in professional development, executive coaching, psychology, and leadership conversations.
Sophie, one final takeaway for everyone watching.
That you are not less intelligent in English. You have never been less intelligent in English. Your intelligence is exactly the same in every language you speak. The thing that changes is your delivery system, and the delivery system has nothing to do with your worth, your value, your insight, or your contribution.
And the colleagues in your meetings are not making the harsh judgments you fear. They are listening for content. They are looking for insight. They are forming impressions based on what you contribute, not how slowly you speak. The harsh judge in the room is your own inner critic, and the inner critic is wrong.
Once you accept this, you can finally show up with your expertise, with your slower pace, with your simpler vocabulary, with your accent, and none of those things will diminish you because they are not who you are. They are just how you sound, and how you sound is not what makes you valuable.
Stop apologizing. Stop staying silent. Stop equating speed with intelligence. Start contributing the brilliant insights you actually have. Slowly, simply, imperfectly. They are exactly what the room needs to hear.
Small challenge before we go. In your very next English meeting, commit to one thing. Speak at least once. Not the perfect sentence, not the elegant phrase, just speak. Share one insight, one observation, one question. Lead with what you know. Don't apologize, don't disclaim, just contribute.
And notice what happens. Notice whether your colleagues actually judge you the way you feared they would. Notice whether the world ends. Notice whether the slower English was actually a problem, or whether the content of what you said was what mattered.
Because once you have the data, the real data from the real world, the accent insecurity starts to crumble. Not because we told you it was wrong, because you saw with your own eyes that your colleagues respect what you say, even when you say it slowly.
Drop a comment after that next meeting. Tell us what happened. Tell us what you contributed. Tell us how your colleagues responded. We want to celebrate it with you.
Because every meeting where you speak instead of stay silent is a meeting where the brilliant version of you finally shows up. And the more often that version shows up, the more your colleagues see who you really are. The slow English is just a vehicle. The brilliance is the cargo, and it's always been there.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to look at one of the deepest, most painful aspects of being a high-achieving non-native speaker.
Reclaim your presence. Trust your intelligence. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.